when the great city of Rome fell, a silence seemed to fall across the West. History books often mark this as an ending, a final chapter in a grand story. The lights went out, the legions marched no more, and the world, it seemed, plunged into a long, dark night. But what if I told you that was only half the story? What if, while the West was fracturing and forgetting, the Roman Empire didn't actually fall? What if it simply moved? For 1,000 years after the last emperor in Rome was deposed, the Roman eagle continued to soar. It flew over glittering domes, bustling markets, and corridors of power where the echoes of Latin and Greek intertwined. This wasn't a ghost or a memory. This was the Roman Empire, alive and breathing in its eastern half, a realm so enduring, so vibrant, and so influential that its story is not an epilogue, but a magnificent saga in its own right. We call it Byzantium. Tonight, let's travel back together, not to the ruins of the Colosseum, but to the golden heart of a city that stood as the bastion of civilization for a millennium. Let's explore the world of the Byzantines, a world that carried the torch of Rome while the West relearned how to build a fire. Picture a city straddling two continents, Europe and Asia, a city protected by formidable walls on land and the sea on three sides. This was Constantinople, the new Rome, founded by Emperor Constantine the Great. It was designed to be the center of the world, and for a long time it was. While cities in the West crumbled, Constantinople grew into the largest and wealthiest city in Christendom. Its streets were paved, its aqueducts supplied fresh water, and at night it was bathed in the glow of countless oil lamps and candles. Imagine walking through its main thoroughfare, the Maze. You'd pass by forums adorned with statues taken from ancient Greece and Rome. See merchants from as far as the Silk Road and the Viking North haggling over spices, silks, and precious furs. You'd hear the chime of church bells and the call to prayer, a symphony of a diverse, cosmopolitan hub. This wasn't a world of decay. It was a world of spectacular, thriving continuity. The Byzantines saw themselves not as successors to Rome, but simply as Romans. They called themselves Romaioi. Their emperor was the Basileus, the direct heir to Augustus and Constantine. And they didn't just preserve the Roman legacy, they curated it, refined it, and built upon it. One of the most profound gifts Byzantium gave to the world was the preservation of law. In the 6th century, Emperor Justinian the Great felt the weight of centuries of Roman legal precedent. It was a chaotic tangle of laws, decrees, and opinions. He commissioned a group of scholars to undertake a monumental task, to collect, edit, and organize all of Roman law into a single, coherent body. The result was the Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law. This incredible work became the foundation for the legal systems of most of modern Europe. When you hear about civil law, contracts, or jurisprudence today, you are hearing the distant echo of Justinian's ambition. He didn't just save Roman law, he made it usable for a new millennium. And then there was the knowledge. While monasteries in the West were painstakingly copying the few texts they had, the libraries and academies of Constantinople were vibrant centers of learning. Scholars pored over the works of Plato, Aristotle, Herodotus, and Thucydides. They debated philosophy, studied mathematics, and charted the stars using the knowledge of Ptolemy. They wrote their own histories, poetry, and theological treatises. Without the Byzantine scribes and scholars who diligently copied and studied these ancient manuscripts for centuries, a vast portion of classical Greek literature and philosophy would have been lost to us forever. The Renaissance in Italy didn't just spring from nowhere. It was ignited by the sparks of knowledge that fled west from a declining Constantinople, carrying these precious texts with them. But you couldn't just read about the glory of Byzantium. You could see it, towering towards the heavens. Their architecture was a breathtaking fusion of Roman engineering and Eastern aesthetics. And its ultimate expression was the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. When it was completed under Justinian, it was the largest interior space in the world. Its defining feature was a massive, seemingly floating dome, pierced by a ring of windows that flooded the interior with light. Imagine stepping inside for the first time. The air is thick with the sweet scent of incense. Sunlight streams down, illuminating shimmering golden mosaics that depict saints and emperors. The space is so vast it feels like a man-made heaven. Procopius, a historian of the time, wrote that the dome did not seem to rest on solid masonry, but to be suspended by a golden chain from the heavens. This wasn't just a building. It was a theological statement, a masterpiece of engineering that defied belief and inspired awe for 1,000 years. It set the standard for a new style of sacred architecture that would influence countless churches and mosques across the world. Life in Byzantium wasn't just for emperors and scholars. It was a complex, deeply religious, and highly structured society. The Orthodox Christian faith was woven into the very fabric of daily life. The year was marked by a calendar of feasts and fasts. Icons, sacred images of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints, were not just art. They were windows to the divine, found in every church, home, and public space. This deep spirituality produced a unique artistic tradition, one of powerful, serene, and otherworldly beauty that still resonates in Orthodox churches today. Of course, the Byzantine story isn't just one of peaceful preservation. It is a story of survival against all odds. For 1,000 years, Constantinople stood as a fortress, a Christian bulwark against wave after wave of invaders. They fought Sassanid Persians, Arab caliphates, Slavic tribes, Bulgar hordes, and crusading armies from the west. They developed sophisticated military strategies, employed devastating secret weapons, like the legendary Greek fire that could burn on water, and used cunning diplomacy to play their enemies against each other. There were periods of immense power and expansion, and times of devastating loss and near collapse. The empire ebbed and flowed, shrinking and growing like a living thing. But through it all, it held on. This long, slow-burning candle of civilization flickered but never went out. It kept the legacy of Rome alight, while the world around it changed beyond recognition. So why do we sometimes forget this incredible empire? Perhaps because its end, the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, was so final. Perhaps because its legacy is so deeply embedded in our own world that we don't even recognize it. We see it in our laws, we find it in the classic books we read, and we feel its influence in our ideas of a state, diplomacy, and even in the architectural DNA of our grandest buildings. The story of Byzantium is a quiet story, a story of endurance more than explosive conquest. It's a story told not in the crumbling ruins of an arena, but in the luminous gold of a mosaic, in the preserved lines of an ancient philosopher's text, and in the intricate logic of a legal code still in use today. It reminds us that history is not always about loud endings, but sometimes about the quiet, determined act of holding on, of tending a flame through a long night and passing it on so that new worlds can be built in its light. Next time you hear about the fall of Rome, take a moment. Remember the city on the Bosporus. Remember the emperors, scholars, and architects who believed they were still Romans, and for 1,000 years they were right. The Eastern Roman Empire didn't just die, it transformed, and in doing so, it transformed us all. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey tonight. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more explorations into the forgotten corners of history. See you next time. The world did not end in a single day. Rome, the eternal city, the heart of an empire that had pulsed for 1,000 years, didn't just vanish. Its fading was more like a slow, lingering sunset. For generations, people had lived under the eagle's shadow, connected by stone roads that stretched from the misty shores of Britannia to the sun-scorched sands of Syria. They shared laws, a currency, a sense of belonging to something immense, something permanent, and then it was gone. What happens when the sun sets on such a world? What grows in the twilight? Imagine you are a farmer, standing in a field somewhere in Gaul. Your grandfather told you stories of the legions marching past, their armor gleaming. Your father paid his taxes in Roman coin, but now the legions are ghosts. The tax collector no longer comes. The grand road, a few miles away, the one that led to everywhere, is growing quiet. Weeds are starting to sprout between the paving stones. The world, once vast and interconnected, has suddenly shrunk to the size of your village, to the horizon you can see from your hilltop. This isn't a story of collapse, it's a story of transformation, a story of how millions of people learned to live in a world without Rome. This is the dawn of a new age, not an age of darkness, but one of soft morning light, of mist clinging to valleys and small fires burning in the hearths of new communities. It's the beginning of the Middle Ages. The grand villas of the Roman elite, once centers of power and luxury, began to crumble. Their intricate mosaics were covered by dust and dirt. Their heated bathhouses grew cold. But life didn't stop. It simply changed its address. People gathered in smaller, more defensible settlements, often clustered around a local strongman or a stone church. The old imperial network was replaced by 1,000 local ones. Your world was no longer defined by the emperor in a distant palace, but by the lord in the hall on the hill, or the priest in the parish church. These new communities had to become self-sufficient. Trade routes, once protected by Roman might, became perilous. Exotic goods, like spices from the East or fine pottery from Africa, became treasured heirlooms, if they could be found at all. Instead, people relied on what they could grow, craft, and trade locally. The blacksmith, the miller, the weaver, these became the pillars of the village economy. Life became intensely local. The seasons, the harvest, the birth of a calf, the marriage of a neighbor, these were the events that shaped your year, your life. And what of the old Roman roads? They didn't disappear overnight. For a time, they were still used by brave merchants, by pilgrims journeying to holy shrines, and by the armies of new kings carving out their domains. But without the constant maintenance of the empire, they slowly decayed. Bridges collapsed and were not rebuilt. Potholes grew into craters. Nature began its patient work of reclamation. A journey that once took weeks might now take months or become impossible altogether. The world became fragmented, a mosaic of isolated regions, each developing its own unique character its own dialect, its own way of life. Into this power vacuum stepped new leaders, warlords with names that sound like Thunderclovis, Theodoric, Alaric forged kingdoms from the remnants of Roman provinces. These were the Franks, the Goths, the Vandals. They were not just destroyers, they were builders, too. They admired Roman culture, even as they dismantled its political structure. They adopted Roman law, minted coins that mimicked imperial designs, and sought the blessing of the one institution that had survived the fall, the Church. The Christian Church became the great unifying thread in this fragmented world. While empires rose and fell, the Church offered a sense of continuity and shared identity. Bishops and abbots became powerful figures, not just spiritual guides, but also administrators, diplomats, and patrons of learning. In monasteries, tucked away in remote valleys or perched on windswept islands, monks painstakingly copied ancient texts, not just the Bible, but the works of Roman poets, historians, and philosophers. They were the guardians of a flickering flame of knowledge, preserving the intellectual heritage of the ancient world for a future they could only imagine. Life for the average person was a tapestry woven with threads of hardship and joy. The rhythms of agriculture dictated everything. You rose with the sun and worked the fields with tools that had unchanged much in Centrisa wooden plow. A sickle, your own 2 hands. Your diet was simple: bread, porridge, vegetables from your garden, and, if you were lucky, a little meat or cheese. The forest, once a managed resource of the empire, became a place of both opportunity and danger, source of wood and game, but also home to wolves and outlaws. Yet, this was not a world without color or creativity. People gathered for feast days, celebrated harvests with music and dance, and told stories around the fire on long winter nights. The village church was the center of social life, its walls often painted with vibrant scenes from the Bible for a congregation that mostly couldn't read. Cathedrals began to rise, stone prayers reaching for the heavens, built over generations by the collective effort of entire communities. It was a faith made visible, a testament to their belief in something greater than their daily struggles. New forms of social order emerged. Feudalism began to take shape, a complex web of obligations connecting lord and vassal, knight and peasant. It was a system designed for protection in a dangerous world. A lord offered land and security. In return, a vassal pledged military service. It wasn't a system of equality, but it provided a measure of stability in a time of uncertainty. Your place in the world was largely determined by your birth, a link in a great chain of being that stretched from the lowest peasant to the king, and ultimately to God. This was a world being reborn. The colossal, centralized machine of Rome had broken down, and in its place, thousands of smaller, more organic societies were taking root. It was a time of invention, not just of new kingdoms and social structures, but of new technologies that would slowly reshape life. The heavy plow, the horse collar, the water mill. These innovations, developed and spread across the medieval centuries, made farming more productive and life a little less precarious. So, when we look back at the so-called Dark Ages, let's adjust our eyes. It wasn't an era of darkness, but of twilight and dawn. It was a time of immense challenge and resilience, a time when people learned to build a new world on the ruins of the old. They weren't living in the shadow of a fallen empire. They were laying the foundations for the nations, the languages, and the cultures that would become modern Europe. It's a story of survival, of adaptation, and of the enduring human spirit to create order and meaning in a world turned upside down. The grand highways of Rome may have faded, but in their place, a million new paths were being forged, leading to a future that no Roman could have ever foreseen. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this interesting, consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories about how our world came to be. See you next time. Did you know that most of history's greatest changes happened while people were sleeping? Not literally sleeping in their beds, but sleeping through the slow, creeping transformations of their world. It's a strange thought, isn't it? That the most pivotal moments, the ones that define epochs, don't always arrive with a crash and a bang. Sometimes they arrive on tiptoes, so quietly that almost no one notices until the morning comes and the world is irrevocably different. Imagine a Roman citizen, maybe a merchant or a scholar, living in the 4th century. Life is a tapestry of routines. The morning trip to the market, the afternoon discussions at the public baths, the evening meal with family. The news from the frontiers is troubling. Sure, there are barbarian raids, political instability, and the economy feels a bit shaky. But these are distant concerns, the background noise of life. The sun still rises over the Colosseum. The aqueducts still bring fresh water into the city, and the gods, or the new god, still seem to watch over them. The empire, eternal and vast, feels as solid as the marble of its temples. They go to bed each night, assuming that tomorrow will be much like today. They were sleeping, not in ignorance, but in the comforting blanket of normalcy. They couldn't see the 1,000 tiny cracks forming in the foundation of their world. The fall of Rome wasn't a single event. It was a process, a long, slow exhale that lasted for generations. And for most of the people living through it, it was just life. They were busy with their own worries, their own hopes, their own loves. They were sleeping through the end of an era. Now, let's bring it closer to home. How different are we really? We wake up, we check our phones. We see headlines about climate change, economic shifts, political divides, rapid technological advancements that feel both magical and terrifying. It's a lot. And just like that Roman merchant, it can feel like distant background noise. We have jobs to go to, bills to pay, children to raise, friends to meet. The sheer scale of global change is so immense, so overwhelming, that our minds have a natural defense mechanism. We zoom in. We focus on the manageable, the immediate, the personal. We get busy with the business of living, and in doing so, we too can fall asleep to the larger story unfolding around us. Think about the last 2 decades. The internet, which was a novelty for many, has completely rewired our society, our brains, how we connect, how we think. Smartphones have put the entire repository of human knowledge in our pockets, yet we use them to argue with strangers and watch cat videos. These aren't criticisms, they are observations of a profound shift that happened so quickly, we barely had time to register its full impact. We adapted, we integrated, we normalized. We slept through the revolution because we were participating in it. It's like being a single drop of water in a river that is slowly changing its course. This isn't about inducing anxiety or fear. It's the opposite. It's an invitation to wake up, but gently. Not with a jolt of panic, but like waking on a quiet Sunday morning with soft light filtering through the window. It's about cultivating a quiet awareness, a gentle curiosity about the currents that are shaping our world. What if we took a moment, just a moment each day, to zoom out, to look past our immediate to-do lists and ponder the bigger picture, to ask ourselves, what story is unfolding right now? What great change are we, perhaps, sleeping through? It might be the slow decline of something we take for granted, or the quiet birth of something new and beautiful. Maybe it's a shift in our collective values, a new understanding of consciousness, or a different way of relating to the planet. These changes don't announce themselves with trumpets. They whisper. They grow in the quiet corners, in the conversations between friends, in the art people create, in the way a community decides to care for its most vulnerable. The Roman citizen couldn't see the Renaissance on the other side of the Dark Ages. They couldn't imagine a world of science, of exploration, of human rights. They only saw the crumbling of the old. But from that compost of a fallen empire, new things grew. And that's the hopeful part of this whole story. Endings are always beginnings. Decay is the necessary fertilizer for new life. So, as we stand in our own moment of profound and rapid change, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel nostalgic for a simpler time, or to simply tune out and go back to sleep. But there is another option. We can choose to be present. We can choose to be awake to both the challenges and the possibilities of our time. We can be the quiet observers, the thoughtful participants. We don't have to have all the answers. In fact, nobody does. The task is simply to stay awake, to watch, to listen, and to participate with intention and with heart. Imagine yourself standing in those same Roman ruins, but not at dusk, not at the end of the day. Imagine you are there at dawn. The air is cool and still. The sky is a pale, promising blue. You can hear the city around you beginning to stir, the distant sounds of a new day beginning. In this light, the ruins are not a symbol of loss or failure. They are a testament to endurance. They are a reminder that civilizations, like people, are mortal. But they are also a reminder that life goes on, that the sun always rises, that after every long night there is a dawn. This is the great, quiet hope that we can hold on to, that even as old structures crumble, new ones are being built. Even as old certainties fade, new wisdom is being born. We are not just the sleepers in a falling empire. We are also the dreamers of the world to come. We are the architects of the dawn. The work is not to frantically shore up the old walls, but to lay the foundations for the new, with kindness, with compassion, with a deep and abiding faith in the resilience of the human spirit. So, as you prepare for your own rest tonight, as you let go of the day's worries and concerns, I invite you to carry this image with you. The sunrise over the ruins. Let it be a symbol of hope, a reminder that endings are not just endings. They are also the space where new beginnings take root. The world is changing. Yes, it always is. But you are part of that change. Your awareness, your choices, your love, they are all threads in the tapestry of the new dawn. Let the noise of the world fade away. Let the anxieties of the future and the regrets of the past dissolve. There is nothing you need to solve right now. There is nothing you need to do. The only task is to rest, to allow your body and mind to find peace, to trust in the cycle of night and day, of endings and beginnings. Sleep well, sleep peacefully, and may you wake gently to the beauty of the dawn. Rest now. The world will be here when you wake.